Hey, I'm Sean Durkin, writer-director of The Iron Claw, and had a great time on Territory Marks.
So my co-host and I, Paul
Hello,
London.
sir.
Hey, how
How
are
are
you?
Paul
you,
London
sir?
is a former WWE wrestler, professional wrestler, actor extraordinaire. And it's an honor to have you on our show to talk about the Iron Claw.
It
Thanks for
really
having me.
is. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for taking the time. Wow, I was blown away. Can I just say right off the bat, where the wrestler, I was crying at the end. In your film, I was I'm even thinking about it now, but I was crying in multiple points throughout. I don't know if Zach could notice, but I was kind of hiding. So I was just like, and
My shoulder's still
Don't
wet from
hide.
you
Cry,
crying.
cry freely. That's the message of
No,
the
you're right. And it wasn't even. I mean, in the first moment, like I can think to the moments in films that I always start crying at, and in this, it was it was early on, but it was that first date scene with Kevin and Pam because it was just like she saw who he really was, and he wasn't used to that. And so I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over
Oh,
the place.
thank
I'm
you.
just so
No, I
excited.
love it.
I absolutely loved this film, and
Thank
it
you.
affected me. It affected me, and so thank you,
That means a lot.
Mister. Thank you, Mister Durkin. Thank you.
You.
Um, I
That's
know
it. We're
Zach was
done. No, I'm
blown.
kidding.
Yeah, no, we'll just uh, how on earth do you? You know, this is seemingly your third film. I just finished watching Martha Marcy. Okay, so without having seen uh, your other film, I'm wondering if that also involves some sort of a cult structure.
Well, you might be able to argue that it does, but
The Nest, yeah,
it's also about a family. And it's about a family who lives a specific kind of life that is, foreign to most people who watch it. So,
yeah.
yeah, there's definitely a through line of investigating families and why we believe, questioning why we believe what we believe, and why families believe what they believe. And
From the standpoint of a professional wrestler, the emotion that you touched on, without it being a gimmick and without it being, you know, breaking kayfabe. I mean,
Right.
keeping it real. I loved how you opened up in black and white to signify the times. I mean, it was beautifully shot. I could go on and on. I'm gonna let Zach talk for a little bit so I don't embarrass myself.
Well, no, I'll piggyback on what Paul's saying, that obviously our podcast focuses on the territory era of wrestling, the 80s. And we are huge world-class championship wrestling fans. We grew up watching the product, obviously follow the wrestlers and their careers. And I think most wrestling fans know the story of the Von Erichs, how tragic it is. Non-wrestling fans, which I think you're going to bring a lot of those into this movie, are gonna see this picture of a family in my opinion, of what it takes, what it takes on your, not just your physical body, but your mental body as well. And so I know you've probably spoken about this before, but what inspired you to do a movie about the Von Erichs?
well, I was just I was such a wrestling fan as a kid, like, and for me, wrestling was probably the first place where I both learned to express myself and also began storytelling.
Hmm.
So I was became a fan in the late 80s, and really like late 80s, early 90s. It was everything to me. I mean, I was obsessed. And I was living in England, so it wasn't like it was super big there. It wasn't, I had to dig to find it, and I had
Yeah.
to. So there was obviously WWF on TV a little bit, but not even a ton, and
Right.
WCW was starting to come out on TV there, but beyond that, I would just like search for old tapes with old NWA matches, and probably came across a copy of Parade of Champions, and But I remember seeing the Sportatorium for the first time on one of those NWA, compilation best of matches, and would have seen Freebirds and Von Erichs at the Sportatorium. And there was just something about it. There was something about them. There's something about that place. And, people ask that question of like, if you could time travel, where would you go? And it
Right.
turns out my answer is 1983 Sportatorium.
Oh, nice. Well, I will tell you really quickly, and this isn't spoiling anything. It's simply the fact that the Sportatorium is no longer there, and you recreated it. I mean, Magic of Hollywood. Did you build a whole Sportatorium, or what did you do?
We did. We actually, so we went on a pilgrimage to the land, to the Holy Land, and we stood on the grass there, and we saw how it sat against the city, or would have at one point. And yeah, we just wanted to, we collected every photo we could, every bit of video. We just wanted to get the details. And we thought it'd be kind of easy. We were shooting in Louisiana, and we thought it'd be kind of easy to find, like, it's like essentially a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
How hard can that be? But it was really, really difficult. And nothing quite felt right, or it either felt too new or too finished. We could never quite get it right. And anyway, my designer finally found this place that was a furniture showroom. And we went in, and it was like filled with fake living rooms.
Okay.
And he was able to like look up
Perfect.
at the ceiling and see and get a sense of space. And he's like, it's it. This is it. And so we convinced them to let us take out all the furniture, knock down all the walls. We had this open space, and it was perfect. And then and the entryway, we did what we could, and we did a little VFX with that. But basically everything inside was built, and it was fully functional. Like, you could walk from the living room, the locker room, through the ring to outside. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
crazy. I think I think obviously non-wrestling fans will automatically think of people like Hogan, Flair, Austin, The Rock, et cetera, the big names, right? The Mount Rushmore type wrestlers, if you will, for mainstream fans. But for people who grew up on the product, people who watched, cable feeds that wouldn't come through all the way or whatever, they're going to get glimpses of Kerry Von Erich, then glimpses of Bruiser Brody. They're going to get glimpses of, Kevin, obviously. And
Hernandez.
right.
Gino and his habits.
Yeah. And I mean, you captured there's a documentary called Heroes of World Class that I've constantly shouted out. I think it's a remarkable documentary that really covers the whole history. What you were able to capture in 2 hours was a very daunting task. So obviously you had to
Absolutely.
remove things that didn't keep the flow of the movie going. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Definitely. I mean, the hardest decision I've ever made as a writer was choosing to not depict Chris.
Hmm.
And I wrote the script for 7 years. So,
Wow.
when I start the process, I have a base knowledge, from my childhood and just from general wrestling knowledge. And then I lay out, do a lot of research, and lay out sort of every story point I can pull from every interview, everything I've read, and build a timeline of events of this family. And it's way too much to ever fit in a movie.
No.
And so begins, the journey of finding the core of the story. And, the shining light is Kevin and his survival and his outlook on life, and the way he rebuilt, and the way he talks so openly and so emotionally about his darkest days and his great times with his brother and his love for his family, and all of that. And so that became the focus of the movie. So every decision basically was about how to service that being the core of the story. And Chris was in there for a long time. And it was, when it became apparent that from a storytelling perspective, not on a human level, because you can't say this on a human level because it is what it is, but from a storytelling standpoint, there's a repetition in the tragedy, in the way the three brothers who killed themselves died. And it was sort of hurting the chances of the movie being made. It was hurting it was really hurting the storytelling in a way. And so I had to make the very painful decision to not show him, and but did take, you know, some things I learned about him and put them into the character of Mike. And so in some ways the character of Mike becomes a bit of Chris, a bit of Mike.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, we noticed that because I thought, oh my God, I didn't know Mike was such a, and so I thought that was extremely, I thought that was wonderful, actually, when I read that that's what happened in terms, because I was curious about Chris as well. So when I understood the reasoning and then saw the elements of him were infused into the Mike character, because, I think from a public standpoint, we didn't really get to know much of anything,
Yeah.
especially about Mike.
Right.
And all we really have are, sadly, a lot of the interviews post uh, the toxic shock.
Yeah.
So it's extremely disheartening. And so that was one thing that I absolutely I think allowed me to become just so trusting and vulnerable with your story, was just that it was easy to care about these people, and we had so many good reasons to.
Yeah.
And even though where it's headed, and I credit the acting, absolutely. I mean, to me, my favorite was, I thought Holt McCallany was as perfect a casting for Fritz as possible. To me, he was kind of the spine of the film. For me personally, I thought he was just outstanding. Mind you, I've been a fan of his since Creepshow 2. So
this is true. This is true.
Yeah, I actually just left a message on his post saying you've come a long way from Sam White Moon.
Right. Well, and I want to follow up with how you capture certain things, and with a question about the music, because period pieces to me either live by the sword, die by the sword when it comes to music, and you live by that sword because you captured those moments. There's not I think Rush has a huge following, but it's more of a cult following, I think.
That cult word again.
Well, I did think it's less of a mainstream band than, say, I don't know, Van Halen, so to speak, right? But equally talented. I'm sure listeners will be like, "What did you just compare them to?" But Rush being like the big hook, obviously it's Carrie's theme song that brings him to the ring. Can you talk a little bit about the music choices and the music selections you made?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to sort of build a playlist as I write the script, and that was number one. If it was like, if I ended up having the budget for one song, that was going to be it.
Nice.
Both because it was Carrie's, but also because of what Carrie brought to the ring. I wanted that energy when Carrie enters, that's their pinnacle, them together. He brought a different thing, and I wanted to have that full wrestling montage. I wanted like a great sports movie montage, and so it was important to have the song for the story, but also for the vibe of the height of the movie, and it was important to the texture of the movie.
Well, I will say too, the score that you have in it is very reminiscent of Explosions in the Sky, that instrumental band, and it had those shades of Friday Night Lights, which I thought was a terrific score as well. So I don't want to diminish the score by any means also.
Thanks.
No,
Yeah.
the score starts off very, I mean, I think I mentioned it to Zach. I was like, I hope this is like A24's music, or this is a sign of bad things to come, like right off the bat.
Yeah,
like,
we
oh,
wanted to have
Jesus.
both like a really classical, like operatic score,
Yeah.
and we also wanted there to be, a bit more like rock and roll, like when the brothers are together, and so and to have those things collide, which is what the movie's very much about. It's like about generations colliding, and so that was all really important. And then also the original song, the song that Mike plays, that's an original song written by the composer.
Wow.
Yeah, for the movie. And so and actually there's some score pieces in the movie that are renditions of the song broken down, and so the original song is also kind of a part of the score as well.
So you
Oh,
answered the
wow.
question I had in my head, because I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Obviously we don't want to spoil anything, for the movie hasn't come out
No,
yet.
I'm trying so hard not to. Yes, I might have already. I hope not.
We do have a couple questions from fans, listeners, specifically to you. The Kevin Von Erich Archive is a Instagram page, and it's got a huge following. And obviously, it's a fan of the whole Von Erich family, but specifically Kevin Von Erich. They want to know who your all-time favorite Von Erich is. If you
Putting
had to
him in
pick
the
one.
Fritz role
I
now.
love them all equally for their own for their own
Right.
individuality.
That's fair.
You know, I yeah, I mean, I think when I go back to, how it all started, the image of Kevin flying off the top rope barefoot really captured me. That was one of the first things I remember about seeing those guys. But yeah, but then, I got to see Kerry live a few times in WWF. And so, and in some ways when I read about his death, I think that is what, hit me, in the heart,
Right.
and even now I've spent so much time with the whole family. We've gotten to know all the kids, and, could put
Yeah.
Lacey Von Erich up there with my favorite Von Erichs too. So
Yeah, no,
Have you?
that's a very nice way to answer it.
Yeah, they'll have you out to Hawaii hopefully soon enough. That would be nice to. No, I think that was part of Kevin's just wherewithal and awareness, and really says a lot about him that he kind of took his family and just took them out of the situation. And I know Ross and Marshall from working with them in Japan, and they're great guys, and it's amazing to see how Kevin has brought them up, but allowed them to be their own men at the same time. Because whether there was talk of a curse or not, I don't know, but it you certainly wouldn't think it from looking at how Kevin lives his life and how he opens up his family, and just the love that he shares so openly.
absolutely.
And it's, to me, that's Kevin.
Yeah.
He's just
When you also you do such a great job of showing perseverance through pain. And how we said this to David Manning earlier today, the referee of world-class championship wrestling and Booker,
and Booker.
and amazing storyteller as well. We all go through levels of tragedy. We all go through levels of heartache, and how you weather that storm, how you are able to pick yourself back up. Not everybody does. This miraculous story, I've said this many times. People said, tell me about Iron Claw. Tell me about Iron Claw. And I said, it's everything you would expect from such a tragic story, but there is an uplifting piece to it as well. A reminder that you can go on, you can move on, you can never forget, but always move forward. And I think you captured that beautifully.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think, I think it is what drew me to it. And I think it's like Kevin's heart is at the heart of this movie,
Right.
The real Kevin, and the way that he talks about surviving. And, it's, like the curse here, obviously, like, there's no real curse, but
right.
The curse is to not face your emotions, to hide them, to put them down, to not embrace them, and to think that you can just push through the pain without dealing with it. And Kevin survived because he dealt with it. He's open about it, and he is open about his darkest days and his brightest days. And it's the way he talks about it is very, very beautiful. And I think that that's really, really at the center of the story, and what was the guiding light in all of those decisions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I forgot I was, and I rarely do this, but I forgot I was watching Zac Efron there for a minute, and for most of it. And I'm curious about the casting. What did you have people in mind already? Were they suggestions? What can you tell us about the casting? Because I thought they were great.
Yeah. I mean, I've wanted to work with them all for a long time, so they're sort of a dream cast for me. I think in some ways, Holt was maybe one of the first concrete ideas. I mean, I just felt like he could be Fritz. And I thought, this movie lives and dies on Fritz.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get Fritz right, everything else loses credibility.
Right.
And so he's the fabric of the movie. And then, but Zach is obviously the center of the film, and everything is built around him. And I've been such a fan of his for so long, and he just does so many different things. And I just I'm always drawn to whatever he does, whether it's comedy, musicals, so I've wanted to work with him. I've always wondered how he'd feel in one of my worlds. And he's also hungry to do good work. He's unafraid to try things. And that's always what I'm looking for in an actor, is someone who's, willing to go for it.
Well, he goes for it.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up, and I want to be mindful of your time.
Absolutely.
Paulette is a listener of the show as well, and she wanted to know any particular matches that stood out to you in the Von Erich's career that you used as inspiration for this movie.
Yeah. So we actually depict a couple that are sort of loosely based on real matches. There's a Kevin Harley race match, and I love that. I love the real match of that. I think it's amazing match.
Same.
And it's a big moment in all of their careers. So the challenge was how to take that and sort of be true to the match, but use it for the narrative that we needed to use it for Kevin. And the same with the Ric Flair, which was a more loose adaptation of what that match really was, but in a way that moment of Kevin losing it and using the claw and getting ripped off Ric Flair, that was also something that's sort of adapted from a real match. And so those are sort of like the pillars for Kevin.
Nice. Well, we are focusing this whole month on the Von Erichs, and we are covering matches specifically from the time they were together, and some of the more lesser known ones, like when David Von Erich wrestled Jimmy Garvin for Valet for a Day.
Yeah.
If you've never seen that,
you
got to check it out because it's wonderful.
So
but quickly, the last time I saw the Freebirds depicted on screen was in Highlander, and so what you did on screen and I sat right behind the guy who plays Terry Gordy. Paul, what's his?
Oh, Silas. He's a good friend of mine. Silas is great.
Silas is great. He brought the belt to Dallas, and he's like, I look like a fool. I go, no, man, you're the only person in this building that has a belt around their strap on their shoulder. You look like the man, so.
That was great.
I'm glad I didn't bring my belts into the screener yesterday. I would have felt like a fool. Come on.
Yeah, Paul's a two-time champ right now.
Where's Sean? Where's Sean? Yeah, there's one right there.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, he's a Compton champion.
And
wow. There's my Arizona title right there. So
I really just did all of this so that I could hold belts in the ring. I mean,
they're heavier than you thought, probably, right? They're a bit heavier than you think, and thank you so much, Sean. I won't hold it against you that I wasn't in your film, but we might just meet in person one day, and I'll show you those tapes because I feel pretty good about my flair.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks so much. Take care.